Hi, welcome to today's American Association for Respiratory Care's Perspectives podcast, live from Congress 2025 in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Lisa Weisenberger, AARC Director of Engagement and Media, and I'm here today with AARC Program Committee members Amanda Nickel and Katlyn Burr. Thank you both for joining me today to chat about the process of submitting a meeting proposal and some tips for successfully getting on the podium. To begin, can you give us a high-level summary of how the proposal submission goes?
Yeah, absolutely. So every year, the AARC Program Committee puts out a request for lecture proposals. Those proposals are generally due towards the beginning of the year. I believe this year's closing date is January 5th. After individuals submit their ideas for proposals, the program committee meets together to discuss them. We do a review process with our section chairs, and then we really sit down to design the program for the upcoming year.
For those who haven't submitted a proposal before, what makes a great submission? I know both of you have some good tips for that.
Yeah, I'll start us out. I think the best thing to do is to really go back and review previous years' Congress schedules to be able to see what are we looking for in terms of how to write your title, how to write your description. Really make sure that it is a professional submission. We expect this to be polished. You put your best work forward. If you need help, give yourself ample time to ask, whether it be your section chairs or the program committee or somebody for help.
Yeah, I think that if you were to do anything, kind of having a topic that's relevant and can impact the lives of RTs and patients is probably something that should be top of mind. When you think about the content that you engage with at an AARC event, which lectures are you putting on your list to want to be in the audience for? And those are things that you want to try and tailor your proposal for. How many RTs are going to be impacted by the work that you are potentially going to share? And I think that another thing to consider is that you are sharing scientific evidence at a professional meeting. This is not a book report. We know RTs are doing great things all over the world, but what is applicable to your specific department is only a small portion of what people want to hear. They want the evidence so that they can replicate that and sell that story in their environment, which may be in another country or on another coast. And so I think all of those things are really important.
So with all of that being said, how long do you think it actually takes? Or maybe if you guys can you've obviously both been on the podium before. How long does it take to prepare and submit a proposal?
I'm preparing all year long. I literally have a note section in my phone where I write down lecture ideas all year long, whether they're for me or someone else or just the leadership and management section in general. This is not something that should be like a 5-minute light bulb moment. Even if you do have a great idea, you're probably going to need to at least take an hour to do a quick lit search, to review the prior agenda, and then a good probably 20 to 30 minutes to write out your proposal. As Amanda said, these are graded. The program committee, the chairs of the sections, they rate them. And if you aren't using punctuation or everything's in lowercase letters or your description is one long run-on sentence with 47 different spelling mistakes, you guys are laughing, but this actually happens.
It does actually.
And while I love AI and AI-related tools, you definitely can tell when someone has copy-pasted something that ChatGPT created for you or Copilot created for you. So really taking time to kind of read it back, ask someone else, does this make sense if you're not me because I thought of the idea? All of those things are going to be kind of key in making your proposal stand out and get a high rating to potentially make it on an agenda.
I agree with Katie. I start a document the second that the portal closes. So January 5th will be the closing date. And then, it never fails. I'll come up with a light bulb moment. And it starts as a light bulb moment. But as Katie said, you need to take some time to develop it afterwards. And so I try to jot down those notes right away. And then I go back, maybe a month before the portal closes, I open up my document. And that's when I really start trying to refine my proposals. As Katie said, you want to make sure that you actually have enough evidence to speak on the topic. And so if there isn't any evidence out there, it's really hard to build a presentation around that. So just those are some great things to consider. Take your time. It's not really something that should be rushed at the last minute.
How can people choose the right topic so that they can be considered?
Ask RTs, even your colleagues at work, like, what is something that's difficult that you wish you had more evidence on? What do you struggle explaining to providers when you're trying to advocate for a patient? You can do that where you work every day as an RT, but generally when you're submitting something, that's what you want to try and solve for the audience of RTs who are at this event. Your talk is a winner if people leave with something to do or implement that drives better patient outcomes. And I think, even if you don't feel like you have a lot of connections outside of your place of work, you can start there. If you're in a position where you don't feel like you have those connections, AARC Connect is a really great place to go. Look on the feed for your specialty section or the section that you're submitting an RFP in. Find the topics that people are asking questions about. Think about what evidence is out there. All of the section chairs are publicly available to be contacted. They love staying connected to the RT community. So reach out to your specific section chair. Ask them, what are the needs? How can you help fill a void? And then I think probably last, I would say go back and look at the agendas from the prior meeting. So this year, we're going back and looking at 2023 and 2024 events to make sure that we're not repeating the same content over again. It's lovely to be here and connecting with everyone. And we do have a lot of people who are here for the first time, but majority of people who are here for the first time come back again, which is the cool part about professional networking and connection. And so we want them to be able to have different opportunities to learn and not offer the same content over and over again.
Do you have anything to add to that, Amanda?
I don't think so. I guess, what really spoke to me is the AARC Connect page. I think that page can be a very valuable resource to sort of hear what clinical controversies are happening. And you begin to hear input from, different RTs who maybe say, well, I practice this way. Well, I don't do that, and so there's a lot of back and forth that occurs. And then you start to think, well, you reflect on yourself and say, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? And then that's what should really be driving us towards doing those literature searches and making sure that we're finding most current, up-to-date evidence. Maybe some of the things that we're doing are a little outdated and there's not much to present that's new. So those are all things that you want to think about when you're designing your proposals.
So why is it important to match your expertise to the audience that you're trying to present to?
Yeah, I think Katie had some really good tips on this one when we did our little recordings for the portal. But as Katie said before, we want to make sure that we are getting people on the podium who have actually lived the experience of working in a specific area. So if you are not a neonatal pediatric RT, chances are we probably would not select you to do a talk in neonatal pediatrics. So just, making sure your expertise aligns with the content area that you're trying to submit is very important. Sometimes individuals will submit 20 proposals and they're all in different sections. And sometimes the committee will take a step back and look at that and say, well, what is this person truly skilled in? What is their, area of expertise? So try to ask that question about yourself. What is your bread and butter? And then pick, focus in on that specific topic so that you're putting your best work forward.
And I think I would say, don't take that in a judgy or personal way. Like, we do it the same way for ourselves. I don't work at the bedside every day anymore. I tell people no when they ask me to do a talk on something that's really heavy clinical. And I really only do talks on leadership and things related to leadership, budgeting, and people management, because that is what you do every day. And when you think about confident speakers that you can take something away from after you listen to them, it generally is because they understand what they're talking about so much, not just because they did the work to make the presentation and review the evidence and put the slides together, but it's because they actually do those things all day, every day, and they don't struggle to ask questions or, to make those connections. So I think, it's all about kind of creating your identity as a speaker and sharing your expertise. And I think that's true when you look at really famous public speakers. They generally only speak about one topic, certain topics. And, although maybe our platform isn't as large, that really is the same thing that we need to do as speakers within our profession.
So, Amanda, what are some reasons proposals get rejected?
They
yeah.
suck.
No, not entirely. Sometimes, as Katie said before, we have the submissions that come through that just are not polished. They might be missing punctuation, incomplete sentences. So we really, again, we expect it to be in a finalized version. So lean on your colleagues, ask for sort of a peer review of your proposal just from a friend, a mentor, anyone who's another RT that would be able to give you some input, and make sure you ask someone who's going to be honest about their feedback. I think a lot of times we get very vague descriptions. So the committee reviews it and thinks, well, we're not really sure what you're going to talk about in the 30 minutes because the topic you're proposing would really, it has the potential to be a whole conference in and of itself, right? The topic might be so broad that it's difficult to hone in on what the speaker really is going to speak about. And then I think the other thing is the learning objectives. We like to see people use action verbs like Bloom's taxonomy type structure to be able to say, what is your learner going to take away from your lecture? You should be using verbs like describe, implement, just action verbs. So if you're unfamiliar with that type of objective writing, do a little research on that so that you can write some solid learning objectives. But I think the most important thing is that our national meetings are meant to be continuing education for practicing respiratory therapists. This is our licensure. So even though you may have a very exciting topic that you are passionate about, we need to be able to justify it as continuing education credits. So you have to be able to sell that to us when you're writing a proposal. Do you have anything to add in terms of other reasons why we get rejections?
I think sometimes people tend to take rejection harsh. It's hard to lose as an adult. We think, right, we have this expertise and it takes time, right, to put in an RFP. So once we've taken all that time to review and connect and write, when someone tells us, no, not this year or not this time, it's easy to take that personally. But I do think people should understand that we're getting way more proposals than we actually can use. And while you may have submitted a proposal on a specific topic, if 20 other RTs also submitted the same topic because they're doing the same work around like, what are people talking about? Yeah. What's a novel topic that I can share with my colleagues and friends? I think that we can only pick one speaker and we can only fill so many spots in the agenda. So keep that in mind because sometimes the proposals are good. There's just not enough room, or we've already used up all of the leadership and management track, or we've already used up all of the NeoPeds track. So that's just something to keep in mind, that sometimes it might be really good. We don't have enough time. There's only 2 events every year, but we do keep those in mind. And if we think maybe it's better suited the next year, like I've reached out to people and said, you should resubmit that. We just didn't have room in the agenda this year. And if you are not sure, I tell people they can ask me all of the time. I will give feedback. Anyone on the program committee will give feedback on like what could have gone better. Maybe why didn't you choose me this year? Like sometimes it just doesn't work out, but I've been rejected. Amanda's been rejected.
Katie rejects me a lot.
I think that just keep that in mind is we want to give everyone an opportunity. It might not be exactly every RFP that you submit or the year that you want it to happen, but keep trying and keep submitting and keep putting yourself out there and keep coming up with ideas. The other thing I would say is sometimes people fill out their proposals and they, for some reason or the other, don't read the fields that they're filling out. And so when you submit it, it says, are you the speaker or is someone else speaking? And have you contacted them? And so they'll keep their name as the submitter. And then in a random comment or in the description somewhere, they'll be like, I think Amanda would be really great to talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. So we'll reach out and they'll be like, oh, no, I didn't want to do that talk. I thought someone else could do it. Oh. And so really take time if you're submitting something to connect with the person you think should speak about it if it's not you. And when you're filling out the RFP form, make sure that you're putting the right things in the right places.
Those are all really great tips. So how you guys have both spoken on the podium several times. How has presenting at a national meeting helped grow your careers?
Yeah, so I spoke for the first time at an meeting for AARC in Summer Forum 2022. And that year, actually, I had submitted 2 proposals, and I had submitted them for the second time. So I got turned down the year before, and I thought, well, I don't know. I think these are pretty good ideas. I'm just going to try again. Maybe it wasn't anything wrong with my proposal. Maybe it just wasn't of interest in that content year. So I did try a second time with those same proposals and they got accepted. And so, I think that goes to that point that, keep trying. If you genuinely think that what you're putting forward is good work, I can't stress enough that sometimes the rejections are just, we only simply have so many slots that we have available. And if you look at our previous years for conference, we're always trying to get new speakers in. We don't want to hear the same people every single year. And even though sometimes we have to because they are the experts on the content area, right? But I would say that being a part of that summer forum group, I loved that the opportunity to speak came at Summer Forum for me because it's a smaller meeting. It's a meeting that is really built for networking. And it was the first time I ever traveled to a national meeting without any of my colleagues from my own institution. And so I felt a little like a fish out of water because I wasn't really sure. I'm speaking for the first time. I was a little bit nervous. I didn't know anybody. And I didn't have my mentor there to kind of, put her arm around my shoulder and introduce me to people. So I was really on my own. And I can't tell you how empowering it felt to get up on that podium and afterwards, the people who stayed to ask me questions. It was just such a great experience. And I feel like that was kind of the turning point, which really launched my career into, I'm going to become more involved at a national level. So I really do think that being a speaker at a national meeting sort of switches that trajectory.
That's great. What a great story.
Yeah.
How about you, Katie?
I think it generally really just grows your network. I honestly don't remember the first time I spoke at AARC.
You black out.
I blacked out, but I do think it was Congress. I would tell anyone who's thinking about speaking, start at your state level, get comfortable with speaking. Those are some of the things we consider when we look at proposals is have they spoken before? We might look to see if we can find a recording of you speaking if, someone doesn't know you yet. But really what that speaking experience does, as Amanda said, you start connecting with other people. I don't know how many people have reached out to me about the Safe and Effective Staffing Guide and how we've implemented that into our EMR system. And I've hooked them up with my managers and my supervisors and my EMR team so that they can do the same thing at their institution. But then what that does is I build that professional network is I can email them now at any time because they've emailed me. I don't have to go post on Connect. I can just reach out to the people as we've created these relationships as professional colleagues and ask any random question that pops up in my day, right? Do you guys bill for this? What is required documentation for this service? Help me understand how you do this. And I think that's what speaking really does for you, is it really intensifies the trajectory of professional networking because not only are you reaching out to other people, but other people are reaching out to you. And it's kind of a give and take of knowledge sharing that really creates our professional community and makes respiratory care really cool.
I agree.
So I guess kind of along that same line, what is Speakers Academy and how does that help get you on the podium or develop those skills that you both were talking about?
Speaker Academy is an opportunity that we run every other year. It is for individuals who would be first-time speakers at Congress. So the submission portal opens the same time as the regular request for proposals. It's the same process in terms of the application. You write a title, objectives, a description for your proposed topic, except there's an option in the portal to specifically apply for Speakers Academy. And what Speaker Academy does is there's an opportunity then to audition. So from the proposals, we select a group of individuals to audition. We set those auditions up, and every person auditions in front of a small group of potential mentors. And then if your proposal gets accepted, you then get paired with a mentor to work through the process for the upcoming year. So you will be then, once accepted, basically placed on the Congress schedule for the next year. You'll work with your mentor then to, further refine your description, refine your learning objectives. So again, it doesn't need to be perfect. We expect that it is professional, but, room for growth and opportunity there. But I just think it's a really great experience. And being a mentor myself, I always look at it also as an opportunity to bounce my own ideas off of my mentee. And it becomes more of like a knowledge sharing and workshop type feel rather than, necessarily someone just telling you what to do. Like it's very collaborative. And that's what I love. I love just keying in to certain topics with my peers and saying, well, what do you think about if I would include this in my presentation? And sometimes they have really great feedback for me too. So I've loved being a part of it.
Yeah.
Katie, have you been a part of the Speakers Academy too?
Yeah, so I was on the panel the last few years to help provide feedback in the selection of candidates who get accepted into Speakers Academy. And then last year, I had the pleasure of mentoring one of the Speakers Academy RTs, Sarah Bazelic. So as, we mentored with each other, we met every 2 weeks, probably for a period of 3 to 4 months before Congress. She shared her slide deck with me, when she had questions about like, where do I start? Or, I did this literature review and there's 2,000 articles. Like I can't use them all. What do I pick? What's most important? What do I share? We were able to kind of work through that process together. And then she was able to kind of give me her presentation and I could give her feedback. And, just the collaborative nature of feeling supported. Sometimes you go up on a podium with a presentation and you're like shooting blind. You think you've got it all right, but like you don't know how the audience is going to react. You think you've got something spicy or spunky in there and people are going to laugh. And then all of a sudden, like the audience is quiet and you're like, oh no, I missed the mark there. It gives you a lot of reassurance kind of walking through that process, especially as a first-time speaker. But I also don't think you have to be like a first-time speaker in general, just a first-time speaker at AARC. But even if you're looking for tips with a larger national audience, the people who are mentors have spoken at national conferences multiple times. Generally, there are speakers who get good feedback from people in the audience at AARC using our feedback and evaluation tool. Plug, if you're here, just a reminder, do your evaluations. We look at them every year. We actually get a really, really low rate of evaluations and survey responses. So I would just tell everyone, take the time after Congress when you get that email saying, please evaluate, to share your feedback and start thinking now about things that are going well while you're here and things that aren't going well or things you'd like us to try and do or try and have people talk about in the future. If there's a speaker you love, please tell us that. We want to make sure that we bring them back for you if that's the case. So I know, that process gives you feedback with a mentor, but we also look at all of the feedback as the program committee related to Congress and summer forum events.
So I guess that wraps most of what we've been talking about today. But any other final thoughts you'd like to share for people who want to submit, want to join Speakers Academy, or just your thoughts on Congress and all things this year?
I would just say, to reiterate the point, that don't take it personally. Don't get discouraged if you don't get accepted the first time around. As I said, I didn't, and I submitted my ideas again, and then they did get accepted. And since then, I've submitted my ideas and I've gotten rejected again. So, it really isn't, it's not a personal attack on anyone's, expertise, knowledge, or anything of that nature. It's really just, what is our membership looking for? And I think that we want to hear from the members. We want to know what is important to you in your everyday practice. What do you want to hear? And I think we alluded to this before, but, even if you aren't the one that you think should deliver the lecture, you can still come up with an idea and then try to collaborate with colleagues and say, hey, I have this great idea for a talk. Who would be a good speaker for this? And then start asking around and, ask if you could submit something on their behalf, because that also, sometimes we don't always know what others want to hear. So I think that that's a really great starting point. If you want to be more involved, but maybe you don't want to be the one up on the podium, but you want to have a voice in what shows up on the program.
Yeah. And I would say if you're not involved in this at all, that you're missing out on a big portion of your professional career and connection. I mean, we all face challenges as respiratory therapists. This job is stressful. There's high rates of burnout. We're in a situation where there's not enough RTs and we need more of them. And so generally the day-to-day of our work is go in and try and do the best we can with whatever resources we have at the time. And if you get stuck in that cycle, you end up in a place as a professional RT who's caring for patients where you just don't know what you don't know, and you're limiting the care that you provide to patients. And so I think my advice is whether you want to be a speaker or you just want to be involved in sharing topics or networking or whatever the case may be, I would encourage it wholeheartedly. Like, you can message us on Connect, on LinkedIn. Like, we're happy to find, people for you if you just have a topic idea or talk through why it would work or why it wouldn't work. But if you're not doing that and you're not having the professional connection and connecting with the AARC, you're missing out. I mean, it's one of the best communities from a professional standpoint. And I have so many friends and colleagues and just people. My career would not be the same if we didn't have this connection, if I didn't have this platform. So I would just encourage everyone to lean into the AARC, make sure you're members, and utilize all of the membership opportunities to their fullest capacity.
That was a great way to end on this note of making sure that you're a part of the AARC community. So thanks, Amanda and Katie, for joining me today and sharing your insights about submitting an AARC meeting proposal. To learn more, visit aarc.org and click on the proposal submission image on the homepage. The deadline for that this year is January 5th. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the AARC Perspectives podcast wherever you listen and share these important stories and resources with your colleagues.